Hello everyone, and welcome to the 12th edition of the CoR Digital Masterclasses, this time bringing to your screens a discussion on pro-European narratives. My name is Betty, I'm Social Media Officer at the European Committee of the Regions, and before we turn to our three special guests of today, I'd like to briefly introduce the Digital Masterclasses program, as well as a few housekeeping rules. The next slide, please. One more. The Digital Masterclasses program has been launched by the European Committee of the Regions social media team in 2020 with the aim to provide our members, alternates and their staff with digital skills to better communicate with citizens online. The program consists of three key activities. Firstly, there are expert talks, which are presentations given by leading experts in the digital landscape. Secondly, we have practical sessions, such as this one, offering a bit of more hands-on examples of digital communication. And thirdly, one-on-one sessions, where CoR members receive the personalized consultation of their social media presence. To find out more information about the program, you can contact the social media team at socialmedia@cor.europa.eu. Next slide, please. Now, moving to housekeeping rules for today. The webinar is being recorded and we will share the recording with you via an email afterwards. You'll be also able to sign up to receive our takeaway document summarizing all the key learnings of today. Although your microphones and cameras are switched off, we highly encourage you to send in questions at any time during the webinar via the Q&A button below the video. And our speakers will attend to them after their presentation in a dedicated Q&A session. Last but not least, we are very interested in your feedback and would like to kindly ask you to spare a few moments at the end of the webinar on our evaluation poll. And now, without further ado, I would like to present our moderator for today with the next slide, Wolfgang Petzold, who is the Deputy Director of Directorate for Communication at the European Committee of the Regions. And I am quite sure he's really looking forward into diving into conversations with our speakers. So Wolfgang, I will not take more time of the webinar and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Betty. Also a warm welcome or good evening already from my side. As Betty has said, I'll be moderating this seminar and I indeed really look forward to it. The reason for that being that the project we will be hearing about today, I met just after their foundation, which was right after Brexit in autumn 2016. And already the title of the project, Why Europe, was the attempt to reply to the challenge that Brexit then posed to us. So what I will do in the beginning, I will first of all welcome our three speakers, which is Maxime Bineau, the chair of Why Europe. Then we have Edouard Coppieters and we have Arianna Rizzi. Both of them are being either team leaders or project managers. We'll hear of them in a minute, how they do their work, why they do it, why Europe. And we also learn later on about tips and tricks, how to reach out positive narratives to the younger audience in European affairs. So I'm quite interested in listening to what happened the last 4 years, how the project developed, and also to share with you thoughts and ideas, you the audience, thoughts and ideas of how to communicate a positive image of the European Union. Now, the order of points that we want to address is the following. So first of all, Maxime, Edouard, and Arianna, they will speak to us by using a couple of slides because it's a very visual project. It's online, it's visual. So they're going to show something, what they have done. They're going to lead us through a couple of practical examples, including of what the lessons learned from these examples and projects were. And then we're going to open up in a second step, maybe in a more informal conversation. And exactly as Betty has mentioned, here we look for your questions. Please use the Q&A button on the bottom of your Zoom frame and send us these questions and we try to address as many as possible. So that's everything I want to say. I think, Maxime, you are the first one. I look forward to your presentation now about the why and the how of Why Europe.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Wolfgang. I'm going to switch to the presentation. But in the meantime, I just wanted to make sure for the audience that if you have any question about anything that we mentioned, any thing that we discuss, please mention it in the Q&A afterwards. We'll be happy to answer. And this should be ready. Can you confirm you see my screen?
Yes.
Let's go. All right. So as presented. So my name is Maxime. I'm the chairman of Why Europe, and I'm here with my friends and colleagues Arianna and Edouard.
Hello, I'm Arianna, and within Why Europe, I lead the project Humans of Europe.
Hello, I'm Edouard. I'm the Facebook leader of Why Europe and Kassenprüfer.
Yay, thank you. So to introduce quickly the association, the project, so Why Europe is a collective of young-ish pro-European. We are all volunteer. This is something that we all do on our own time. And our goal is to raise awareness about the benefits of the European Union and to try particularly to reach young audience online. We are only present on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. As an association, we have currently over 20 members from 13 EU and non-EU countries, which is interesting when it comes to the European project. We are currently a German association, non-profit association, which allow us to receive donation to pay a bit the work we do, especially online promotion when it matters. And as Wolfgang explained at the beginning, we were founded indeed as a reaction to Brexit and to this basic idea that, well, if it happened, if this like historic vote happened in the UK, well, maybe there was a good reason is that the EU is not, well, or the European project is not communicated well enough. And that's the starting point that we need to do a different kind of communication around EU matters. We need to do a better one. So the question is, well, how do we do that? So our Europe, we share, we have a basic idea, and this is what we're going to be sharing during this presentation, not only the principles, the ideas, some case studies, and I think overall like the positive narratives that we try to enforce on social media. So our core tenet, again, is that everything is to do communication. We are a bit of a communication project when it comes to this. And we believe that EU communication should strive towards something that is more simple, personal, and emotional. So that's our golden standard, if you want. So now let's have an example to illustrate all of that, and then we'll jump into the nitty-gritty. So this is an example from our Europe Because template series that basically put us on the map at the beginning back in 2017. So really simple visual, as we know. So how does that work? So like we produce something, we put online something that is simple. In this post that you see, there's no long word, there's nothing too difficult. It's like simple, basic. There's no jargon, most of all. It does mention Europe, but as far as it go, it is personal. It's a relatable situation, right? It's like about fatherhood, but family, something that everybody understands and relates to some level. And finally, it's emotional. It grabs you, right? It's the idea of, you know, father-children bonding. Like it's not just like spending time with them. It's like really a bit more than that. So in this way, we don't really talk about the EU directly. We don't talk about the work family time directive or whatever, but we do condense it to its single meaning and in an engaging framing that is more likely to engage audience, young and otherwise. And so those three tenets, these are the ideas we strive towards. It's not always, you know, easy to put all of that. Sometimes there is contradiction. It's of course always related to the context, but overall they support all communication project and are approved by all of our members. So now let's get into something a bit more related to practice. So I'm going to leave the floor to Edouard, who will touch upon more of our editorial process. So how does that work in practice? Edouard?
Yes, thank you, Maxime. So in practice, we articulate our strategy through 4 main key messages, like 4 key positive narratives about the EU that we do want to push. For context, like everyone, we follow the news and we deal with what we pick on. So, you know, we try to add value in the framing. We do not keep like the news itself. We want to add something, make it a bit more special, and we want it to follow the social media life cycle. So we want to make sure that the content that we use is hot and not cold, and that it will spark reactions in our community and in the context of our community. So the first message that we try to push is the fact that we all benefit from the EU. It's a first narrative that we try to underline, and it's a very important one. It is really that like all the EU citizens benefit from the EU, from peace to more concrete examples, you know, like the right to repair, the food standards and everything like that. The closer to everyday people's lives, the better. The second narrative that we're trying to push is the fact that the EU needs to do better, and it can do better. So it's the second one. It's particularly valuable for the Facebook and Twitter team. So the EU is our, you know, common political object. It needs to do more to improve citizens' life. And that's basically as political as we get. We don't need to go further. We just acknowledge the fact that the EU is not perfect, that backroom deals are necessary, but they're not great either, that national states still have the most power and that they don't have always our best interests at heart. So we need to pay attention. That's typically what is going to support the daily story news that we have on Instagram. For the next two ones, I'm going to leave the floor to Arianna.
Yeah. So moving forward, Maxime, if you can, yeah, thanks. So another of our narratives, of our 4 key narratives, is that Europe not only is beneficial, but also Europe is close, or at least closer than you think. Many people nowadays are convinced that the European Union equals just Brussels. So they imagine it as something cold, distant, and bureaucratical. So there is a lot of misinformation. What we try to do in our daily messaging is to make even the most trivial positive things that the EU brings into our lives visible. So here we have a couple of examples of posts that we have produced. So from the possibility to be able to cross borders and meet with your partner, to the possibility to access very good and functional cycling lanes because of EU funding. So yeah, we want to make the positive aspects of the European Union that are there in our daily lives visible. And the last of our 4 key narratives is that Europe is relatable. For sure, the EU is about institutions and policy making. Here in Brussels, we have this angle of seeing it, but the citizens of Europe have to understand that they are part of the same unity. And that's what we try to convey in our everyday message. And we want to make also our community feel like they're part of a big family. And even if we are diverse, diversity brings strength. So united in diversity couldn't be a more appropriate motto for our union. And one of the ways that we do this in our social media accounts is through the project that I actually coordinate, Humans of Europe, about which I'm going to talk in a second. So we decided to present a couple of case studies to exemplify in concrete what we do in our social media communication. So Humans of Europe, which is the project that I lead, is a storytelling project that is posted every week on our social media channels that aims to showcase, to bring forward the faces and also the stories of European citizens, but not only, also people that come from much further away, but have decided to settle here or maybe have something to be thankful for to Europe. So we try to put forward the faces and the stories of people that stand out as European somehow. So here you see an example, the most recent post that we actually incorporated in our social media within the Humans of Europe series. It's Karolina's story. She's a Polish physiotherapist, and she joined the marches against the abortion ban in Poland. So we interviewed her and crafted this post. So in the past, we also worked with Erasmus babies, pan-European couples, or also people that set up their business thanks to EU funding, and so on. So this is the kind of profiles that we look for. And to explain a little bit our process to craft Humans of Europe. So first of all, we try to recruit people through our very European networks. We've discovered that in the association, we're not just pro-Europeans or Europe fans, but we also have a lot of European people that we know. So we try to make our networks work well. Or we also recruit people through ads that we post on social media. You can see one in the corner. We try to invite them to share European stories if they have some. And after, of course, we do a selection of the most interesting ones. And we also have a quality check by all the team members. So everyone is able to comment, review the content, discuss. And once this phase has gone by, then we published what is an example of, in this case, on the slide. Yeah, and Edouard for the next case study.
Yes, so for the next case study, I'm going to focus on pro-EU narratives as community and crisis management. So basically, one of the key things that we try to do in CoR Europe is try to have a connection with our community and our audience. We try to make sure to ensure the fact that they feel like they have a voice, they feel like they can participate into a debate about the subjects that we decide to talk about. This is one of the key ways we try to make them interested, is by ensuring that they can participate, that they are part of it. So yeah, the way we manage that is by ensuring that we are going to reply to a lot of comments. We are going to make sure that like people feel like they're having a discussion with us and they're not just posting anything in the void. And the goal with that is really to create an organic growth in the community, mainly through engagement and discussions and debates. Most of the time, those debates are going to be interesting and sometimes a bit less, unfortunately, because, you know, internet. We do have for that to ensure that we limit the amount of mistakes that we can make. We do have guidelines, but those are very general. As I said before, we try to be less political and just say that the EU, you know, it's a great project, it's our common object of interest. And it's a bit of the same with the guidelines. We try to keep in mind that we are following EU values, etc., but all in all, the process of community engagement is going to be very personal, because this is the way that you're going to ensure there is authenticity, and that people, the community, can really relate to you. Regarding that, we have concrete example, especially with the content that we've put out regarding Hungary and Poland recently. We've been focusing on them a lot because of the rule of law issue. And a lot of the times we had very good discussions with our community about how to improve it, what was the main concerns, etc. But we also had a lot of backlash, not towards us, but towards the country, with people that didn't understand that there's a difference between a party, a country, and the population of a country. And so because of that, we had some members of a community that reached out to us explaining that they felt targeted and shamed for being who they were. And the way you reply to that, this is really crisis management, you ensure that the person is heard and feels heard. So you acknowledge the feelings of that person and you try to respond to it. You also need to clarify your intentions and try to do better in the future. So this is mainly about being able to recognize that you're not going to hold all the answers and you're going to make mistakes along the way, and it's never bad to recognize to your audience that, well, we can do better, thank you for the feedback, and we'll try to implement it. So that's the gist of it regarding crisis management. Now that the case studies are dealt with, we can move on to concrete communication tips that we have for you. So just some advice, and then we'll discuss the Q&A. The first advice that we have for you, which is, I cannot stress that enough, is the fact that the EU is complicated enough, and you really do not need to be. We need to keep in mind that even what we consider to be very basic facts are not for most people. The EU bubble has a very strong tendency to suffer from professional conditioning. And when you realize that even the democratic process within the EU isn't understood by everyone, it just becomes crystal clear that simply presenting facts and number is just not going to be enough. So you need to, like, the information needs to be vulgarized. So avoid EU jargon, keep it simple, find a way to make it relatable. And generally, if you want to do that, if you want to focus on that, what we can recommend is use broader terms, make it emotional, try to keep the information that is difficult to digest to a minimum. And basically, if it's not 100% understandable on the first glance or read, it's not made for social media. You can make an article about it, but don't post it on social media. The second one is also very important, related to, again, especially related to communication with your audience and community. It's the fact that you need to choose your battles. You're not going to be able to fight every front. So try to focus on what you know. Really speak about what you know, where your expertise is, and know your limits. So personally, with War Europe, we refrain from certain topics as we just lack the knowledge or capacity to research. For instance, the subject of migration, this is definitely not a forte. It has been a challenge to handle the racism and xenophobic reactions and still manage to make our post a place for debate and discussion about the subject. So, you know, we try to avoid that. And basically the goal here is just like avoid a bad buzz, because it's often difficult to recover from it. So if you don't feel like you can handle interacting with your community on the subject and respond to difficult and precise questions, then don't put out the content on the subject. Just make sure that you can always fully justify what you put out. Regarding the next tips, I'm going to leave the floor for Arianna.
Yeah, so our third tip is that you should say yourself, meaning that building a community also involves authenticity. Your audience, which you know, of course, expects consistency from you. So don't try to mix your own views with those of the organization that you represent. It's something that we also try to do every day. It's not easy for some topics and sensitive topics. Sometimes we have to have broader discussions and find a common standpoint. And this is to avoid, of course, confusion with our own personal ideas and those of the association in our case. And for the fourth tip, it is very important to connect the dots, meaning that in your European and communication universe, you are certainly not alone. You're not the only one communicating about Europe. So why not think about connecting with other positive EU actors? That's what we try to do as well with Why Europe. At present, we're trying to establish a partnership with another association to join forces and produce valuable content. So Maxime, for the last one.
And to sum it up pretty quickly, because I think we're over time, the final advice we wanted to say to you and to cap it off is a bit of it's going to sound pretty general, but based on our experience, we're seeing that the EU as a topic is becoming more and more politicized. As Edouard and Arianna were hinting at this before, it's not a neutral topic anymore. So it's something that if we want to be positive about it, we will have to go all the way. And one thing that we really want to recommend, as we saw, as the EU there could be a billion debates about what is wrong, what is not working, what is inefficient, but we all have a core issue that, you know, really motivated at heart. And I would encourage everybody to start there, start to see if through that issue, because we are more implicated on the personal level, we can manage to convince others or frame things in a more relatable way. That's a way to start, and this is what we encourage you to be at. And thank you for your attention.
Yeah, very blue jerseys, and I think they are sold on the internet to make the association a bit richer than
They are.
it already is.
They're not currently, but they will come back, yes.
Okay, very good. And what's written on it is, I am European, is that correct?
It is, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much. I saw these jerseys in the European Parliament when you won the award from the committee and the other EU institutions for being so courageous. I think it was in 2017. Thank you very much for the presentation and for the insights that you shared with us. I think they speak quite for themselves. I think that we have not yet received any questions from the audience, so kind reminder, please post them in the questions and answers chat box to say so. For the next couple of minutes, if you don't mind, I would just ask a couple of questions that spring to my mind when I listen to you. The first one would be, and feel free to answer whatever you want. Maybe the moderators in the background, could you put everybody in the same, at the same level as regards our images? Yeah, that's nice. Thank you very much. So my first question would be indeed about the selection of topics. You said you have kind of long-standing topics like the emotional ones, but you also obviously work along the EU agenda. So, example, when there is a European summit on the budget, as there is next week, or on the rule of law, or both together, is that something where you have an editorial team that sits together and scratches everybody's head and then say, let's do something about it because it's hot? Or is it another process? So the real question, how is your editorial framing done? Is it a collective job? And if you have difficulties to decide, is it a majority voting, or are you always working with consensus? Because I imagine that you will have some issues where you don't agree immediately.
I can start with an overview, and I think Edouard is going to focus on more on the Facebook parts. But so we divided basically our organization via social media platform to optimize the render, so that we have like tiny experts, working for Instagram, for Facebook to understand. Because of course, like publishing content on social media, it's its own job, right? So in that case, I think like all teams have two approaches. First, yes, there's the incentive to respond to what is trending, what are people talking about, how can we make a few thousand impression on something to ensure that the page is kept being seen by people, that we're not forgotten. So there is this incentive to go towards like the hot news, follow that. On the other side, we have like those key ideas that we still want to put forward, and the benefits. It's what would be like more cold. So let's say that we really want to talk about the right to repair, because we think, I know it's a cool EU initiative, and that we have to explain to it, like it's again not simple, so we have to go through the thing. And this is, for example, something that we would plan in advance and try to go and to unfold. And again, Instagram, they decide what they do, Facebook does. Instagram, if I may, a few seconds, because I know that we've been a bit quick about this, but they are a news agency in a way, so they will do stories based on news that they saw, thing that they think is interesting. And I know that, again, they have this divide always. So what is like super interesting, we have to jump on immediately to size the moment, and what do we have more time to, and go into with a bit more research. This is the case of the Cohesion series that we're unfolding at the moment, for example.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else wants to come in on that framing and editorial question? Otherwise, I have already two first questions from the audience, and I advance with these because I find it, we need to be in contact. So Sophie Kikic, I think, asks, it seems that the youth are more interested in communicating about Europe than how to engage more with the older generations, with a smiley behind. So do you have old people following you? Why Europe?
I can answer that. So yes, we do. In fact, quite a lot. It's a strong basis of our community on Facebook is people between 38 and 50. So old. We do try. Sorry.
That's old. Yeah, it is.
That's.
Damn it.
For me.
Yeah, okay.
But it's typically, the part of the population that is going to be a bit more Eurosceptic. And so we have a lot of, I would say, I wouldn't call it backlash from them, but like resistance to our pro-European message. But we do have a strong basis, like they are quite present. Sometimes the discussions that we have with them is very interesting, and they are very engaged in the content that we put out. When we talk about, especially when we talk about, joint ventures between different countries through the scope of the EU, tackling certain subjects, they're going to be there during our, like the content production, the content that we've put out regarding COVID-19. They've been really there as well. Willing to criticize the EU, but also willing to criticize their country. And so we do engage with them. And the main thing that we try to do with them is like really try to dissect the misunderstanding that lay in their general comprehension of the EU. So try to really separate what is an EU competence and what is a country competence and that kind of stuff. So it's with that generation, it is way more technicalities regarding how the EU works really and misunderstandings, whereas like with young people, you are more on a emotional message of grand social justice, environmentalist, etc. Type of thing.
Thank you so much. Another question comes in from somebody who wants to remain anonymous, and he or she asks, do you think that it is needed to communicate on social media in the different languages used in the EU, or is it okay to keep communicating in English as a lingua franca in high commerce? In particular, in view of Brexit, I think the last question means now that the UK is nearly gone, shall we turn to French or German or Hungarian or whatever? Do you use other languages than English in your social media accounts or not at all?
So yes, that's a good question, because that's one of our shortcomings. No, English is not going to cut it. I mean, if it's fine, if it's a good lingua franca for professionals and governments, it's fine. It is not the language of the EU citizens by far. We know that. So I think like the best way, and this is something that we like to do, but of course, because we were volunteer, we don't necessarily have the resources to do that. We need to talk to the EU citizens in their own language. There's no middle way, and we have to do this as much as we can using the same tool. I mean, translation, yeah, great, or ever. But if that doesn't work, and if we are stuck, this is why we also have this other, type of content like Humans of Europe, and I think Arianna can talk a bit more about how well language is not necessarily the most striking thing in those posts.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, up until now, we've worked a lot with English because, I mean, we are still communicating on our social media in English, unfortunately, only. But we have had an internal discussion about also the barriers that this language creates us, because none of us is a native speaker. And when we want to reach out to, for example, Europeans who want to tell their story, sometimes if we ask for a story in English, that's going to cut out a big part of the audience. So we are developing a strategy to reach out to people that speak, for example, even older generations that maybe didn't have access to studying English, but maybe studied other languages or speak other languages. So we want to try to rely on our own capacities in terms of language speaking to reach out to a different part of the audience, to collect also more varied stories and represent also other parts of Europe a bit better. Yeah, not only just young people, to come back to the other question as well. Yeah.
Right with this comes in a question asked in French by Odile Menozzi from Nice, but I try to translate it in English. So Odile is asking, well, there are all these press offices of the EU institutions to communicate better with the people. Why are they not more often in the press or in TV? That's the $1 million question that everybody possibly in the institutions ask themselves. What's your answer? I mean, that dives deep into the way in which public communication or communication in general in a multiple EU with different languages and states is working, isn't it?
Right. Merci, Odile. I think it's a bit hard for us to answer that. What I can jump on, for example, is I think like our kind of organization, if they do have an audience that is pan-European-ish, even with younger, that you also have a role to share those kind of media that could be applied to everybody. I'm especially thinking about this TV series that were produced by France, it was like France, Germany, and Italy, Parlement, which I think was a brilliant.
Belgium.
And
France,
Belgium.
Germany, and Belgium.
Okay, right, got it. And I think it was brilliant. And I think we tried to do a bit of promotion on our site, but it's still, of course, niche, and it's hard. But I think these are the kinds of effort you can do regarding media. Whatever journalists can do, it's up to them. We're not necessarily.
Yeah. Did you watch the series and did you like it, or how did you find it?
No, I watched all of it. Loved it. Brilliant.
Any divergent views on that, Edouard?
Well, I unfortunately didn't watch the series, but yeah, I can agree with Maxime on what he said, and like something that I would maybe add if we want to go a bit further is probably the fact that like for the press it is just like more beneficial to cover national stories because people have an easier time to relate to them. And so it's going to require a bit less work regarding the editing and vulgarizing the information that is being put out. So I think like the EU is just not playing on the same level as national news. And so trying to push an EU narrative is just going to be more difficult. So there's going to be more challenges regarding that. And so it is about trying with good habits and new techniques, trying to overcome those challenges by being innovative and trying to bypass, so to say, some very frustrating aspect of that the press can have or media in general can have.
Arianna, any views on your side on why EU doesn't fly into the media?
Oh, well, maybe, I mean, I am relating to my own very Italian experience. Sometimes I have the feeling that national media spheres, they don't really meet with the European media sphere. So it's hard to make the two things meet because maybe also of languages, this is not a marginal aspect. And also because I have the impression that national audiences really want to hear national stories, as Edouard was pointing out. So it's really hard to make the two things converge. So yeah. About the series, I really liked it.
Okay. You know, the series was filmed partly in the Committee of the Regions because it was really low budget, and you might have recognized some of our nasty offices. So we liked a lot having them in our building. But in the end, I found it rather technical and quite jargon heavy, even though they, of course, tried to make fun out of the EU, which not everybody liked in the parliament, by the way, because right. Okay, maybe I can add one aspect that you didn't mention, which is for me somehow crucial, why EU messages are not repeated that often in national news and media. I mean, it's national elites controlling the media. There's a media market, and this is nothing innocent where you can say, well, any message goes to anywhere. It's political and other elites that control still national media markets. And in some cases, I think Brexit was one of them, they didn't really want. And it's of course also difficult as the EU is not something independent, not a spaceship flying around. It's linked, and even some say it's an agency of the member states. The EU has also to, how can I say that, control itself a little bit, what it can and what it cannot say. And for example, for Brexit, some have regretted that in the end. They decided not to interfere with a referendum, which was, a debatable discussion. And so you are not just there sometimes because it was decided like this. And let's not forget, when we speak about the many journalists that work for the EU institutions or press offices, well, I mean, the whole EU institutions, when you count all the officials, not only the press offices, there are just as many officials as the city of Cologne. So it's really a small fraction of the overall picture, and you cannot just expect that they make it on a daily basis. Right, let's go to the next question, another anonymous one. Somebody asks whether, I think that's probably for Edouard, whether he can give an example of actions where you saw that that the tide of conversation changed, and how and why and how did you react? I think the rule of law was already to some extent maybe an example.
Yeah, so the first example I would give is indeed the rule of law, where we had this like just bad vibe from our community, from certain members of our community that like I wouldn't say misinterpreted, but misplaced their anger. And so I think the reaction that we had is we received a message and then we said, okay, so this is something that we need to address immediately and make sure that like other Polish and Hungarian powers do not feel the same, and like that they still consider that we are on their side and we can still consider them European and that like they are important to us. So we directly put out content that was highlighting the importance of the population of Poland and Hungary. We focused on the protest in Poland regarding the like against the PiS government, etc. I'm scratching my head for another one because I have another one on the tip of my tongue, but I cannot put my finger on it.
Right. I can add a more like general thing is that the power of just like taking the time to talk to people. And we know talking to people on social media can be exhausting, toxic, abusive. But we did see it when we take the time to look at people that by chance happen to answer to us, that we can change minds, just like trying, under a conversation to dig into, say, why do you hold as like your skeptic's view? And little by little, it is possible. We saw that happen. But yeah, and it takes time. It's thankless because you're not sure the person is going to keep following those views, but at least for a moment. And it's not about like winning a debate online, the way like usually it's like toxically framed, but it is possible.
Thanks. The next question comes from Michaela Vakaru, and she asks, are you only in high commerce communicating, or do you also intend or create in reality projects? So people working together on something. So are you do you have your feet on the ground sometimes and initiate projects, or do you think about that in the future?
We definitely did project on the ground before in the past. Currently, we are focusing more on the communication online, the strategy. I think down the line, it's going to be much more fruitful. And to see, because we develop tools, because we develop this expertise among ourselves, this is also something that down the line would be able to, for example, implement on a single issue, for example, an election, if you want to kind of push for more of a pro-European message overall. I think like still like fighting out for your skeptics overall, it's still a worthy cause. And this is something that we could articulate our strategy towards. But right now, I think like maintaining the kind of online communities that we have, that's good for us.
Another anonymous follower asks the following question: did you ever test provocative arguments or negative arguments to provoke and stir debate? Did you try that, and how did it work?
I can answer that one because we do that a lot on Facebook. So yes, especially regarding specific subjects such as Brexit, where we're going to directly, I wouldn't say attack, but point out discrepancies in the speech of certain Brexiteers or certain populist figures. And we're going to really be like, okay, like this is not okay. See, like there's an issue there. It is very funny to see. Because from people that behave on, and that's very personal, but for me, I find it so funny to see people that often laugh at like liberals and like Europeans being easily offended, being quite vocal about their anger when we attack their heroes. So yeah, we do that a lot. It does generate a lot of engagement and reach. So it is content that is successful. It's maybe a bit cynical, but yeah, we do that, and it is quite successful and very funny most of the time.
But I do want to share that there's another kind of like negative comment, at least I saw in the send of the question. We did try also campaigns that, if taken at first value, of course, would be, the inverse of what they mean. I think like for the campaign was like, oh, fuck you. And it was like, oh, okay, so if we didn't have the EU, like how would it be? But social media is so that people tend to think at like first degree. So even if you think you're funny, if you think this is an obvious joke, most people are not going to get it. And so you can try like a very negative approach that's just going to backfire immediately because people are just going to pile on you. A cool example that we had was during the 2019 European election campaign, where we had a series about choice, trying to frame choices to push young people to vote, as in you wouldn't let your dad choose your music, you wouldn't let your mom choose how you dress, and I think you wouldn't let your vegan friend decide how you eat. And that was like a bad buzz. And yeah, because again, it's about sensitivity, and people evolve, I think, much faster than you think on those.
Okay, speaking just that you mentioned the European campaigns, I wanted to ask you, there was a very successful video clip produced by the European institutions together. For those who hadn't seen it, it was like 3 minutes, different and very well diverse and selected couples and mothers giving birth, real birth. So real mothers giving real birth. And the last line was, I'm born today, says the baby to the audience, I'm born today, but I'm not alone. I want to live in a Europe that is safe, that is free, and so on and so on. Very emotional, wasn't it? Very courageous. How did you like that campaign yourself? I mean, it was right in the middle of what I think you think is good EU communication. Did you like it, or did you have doubts about that? Did you see it at all?
I did.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna take the first the first reply. Yes, I think it was good. It was very bold to take that route, but I really liked it, and I would very much enjoy seeing EU institutions take that kind of risk in their communication and learn from it. Because if you stay safe in the type of communication that you're going to use, you're never going to learn the extent to like you're never going to progress really. You're going to stay on like the same level all the time. And I think taking risk is going to enable the EU institutions to just progress in the way they communicate and learn new things. And yeah, so I would definitely love to see more of that. But that is very personal. Maybe my friends and colleagues will disagree with me.
It was subtitled. I think the original was in English, and it was subtitled in all languages. And I don't know, the last time I looked it up, I think it had 40 million clicks, and the EU had never done something more successful than that. Right, I go to the next question. An anonymous follower asks, and the session wouldn't be complete without this, about migration. So how did you tackle migration when, and it's always hot, it's just right now not so hot because of COVID-19, but it might come back. It is an EU challenge. No single country cannot find a solution on its own. What's your take on that, or was your take on that, and what were your experiences?
Right. Sure. No, I agree with the premise, and I think like the analysis is the same. What we try to do handling migration will either approach it through more of the dispassionate numbers, just put in perspective, because there was, but it was the case for like 3 years ago, this emphasis that we, media narrative, that we're being submerged by people, but like, what would that mean? How many people do they come from? And slightly try to get back the human element. If you just at least want to have a fair conversation about not, invasion, but really the migration phenomenon, and get there. Yeah, I don't think we have much more to say about this. Of course, you could say that this could be, we should apply maybe one of the tools that we develop on this topic to try to propose a more positive vision. Down the line, our project is still about underlining what is beneficial from the European Union. So on this, often as European, we kind of feel also a bit shameful about what the deals the EU strike between the EU leaders. So it doesn't necessarily motivate us to also work on this, because if it's just to say, oh, there's this other deal, that was watered down by those countries and doesn't really respect human rights or actually even refrain us as EU citizens because, like freedom of movement, then there's less impetus to work on that and to spend resources on something that we know is maybe gonna drive a conversation, but down the line it's a bit muddy. It's not clear.
Another follower asks how COVID is influencing your work now and the content that you're communicating. Any takes on that one?
Yeah, well, so we are an online project, so we also work online. We are meeting each other in online video calls every week, team by team, and also once a month, the whole association. So in that respect, it didn't really change our workflow because we have a couple of tools that we rely on and they're online. And maybe the only thing that couldn't happen in person was our bootcamp, which is an event that we try to hold every once in a while to meet each other in person and bond and so on. But apart from that, there was not a great impact. And one thing that I would like to mention in relation to my project is that we did a series of quarantined humans of Europe to just shed light on some quarantined people all over Europe. And so we addressed COVID in, not a happy way.
Yeah. Very good. Maybe the next question from the chat, and then I have one more, and then we're already at the end. So Vanya Reis from maybe a Baltic state, that's what I guess, is asking. It seems that you tend to prefer national content rather than European content. I wonder whether that is true. And he asks about American content. So did you, for example, engage in the American election campaign in a certain way? And if so, how did you do it? And how did you find the message for that one?
So first, regarding the national content, so it is always interesting for us to try and tackle European news through a national lens to make it more approachable. So often we are going to try to bind together this national and European narrative because it can be done. It is just a matter of shaping the message that you're trying to convey. Regarding the American elections, yes, we very much created content regarding that and regarding the results of it. The way we approach it was like, okay, so for us as Europeans, we would very much want to see an American leader that is likely to have good relations with the EU and with the European countries, which arguably was not really the case with Trump. So yeah, we try to push that, and then we also tackle the Black Lives Matter movement and what happened in the US with that. And this is always the way we tie it in together is through the lens of European values. So democracy, liberty, and freedom of speech, and that kind of stuff. And that is the way that we put it together. American news can be very valuable also to remind us that even what a lot of people consider to be the exemplary democracy can sometimes fail, and the issues that the American people go through is something that a lot of European people can resonate with. So it's also interesting to compare the two and compare what's happening with the US and what's happening with Europe. So yeah, that's the way we try to tie it together.
I think it's also a matter of culture because we are overwhelmed with the American movies, literature, everything. So, and this is hard to dissociate from the internet culture, from which we also take a lot of our inspiration cue to create content that's going to appeal to people. Not to name drops, but we do have to also, produce content that is a bit more on this side of the argument. It's not always pure why Europe content, right? Like memes, a lot of those. And that's, I think, it's a necessity, because that's how, yeah, again, the digital culture is at this state of time, and this is how we have to use it to engage people. Of course, we could wish that there was more European digital juggernaut on our side to produce content that we feel closer to. But until this happens, then this is what we have. And yeah, not to touch upon all the debate about, yeah, European digital rights.
Mm-hmm. I have a last question myself, a personal one I'm interested in, and I would also like maybe to use this as the opportunity already to thank you very much for sharing your insights. It was for me really interesting, and also the audience came in with a lot of questions, which is something you never know before, but I liked that a lot. I think we had something like 10 questions, which we didn't quite expect. So thanks to the audience. My last question, and maybe everybody can answer to it, is it's about a future project, not personally your project, but you might want to engage in it. Just around the corner, we hope there is something like a conference on the future of Europe. It reaches out to citizens for the first time. So citizens, and especially if the wish of the parliament comes true, young citizens will be asked to voice their ideas, wishes, and future hopes for a more united Europe. Will you engage in it? And if you had a wish to the European Union that would, it's close before Christmas, so why not asking Father Christmas to change something? What would you like to change in the European Union project? So will you engage with the conference? And what is your personal wish for a European Union, say, in 10 years' time from now? Maybe Arianna can start.
Yeah, so you're throwing me under the bus. That's great.
Yes, I do.
Okay. No, I
Ever heard about the conference, Arianna? Ever heard about it?
Yeah. I did hear about it, and yeah, it would be of course great to engage, or at least try to do some communication on our side. And in terms of the wish, the Christmas wish for the European Union, I don't know. I am a big EU fan. Of course, I also recognize that there are some more critical aspects, but yeah, I think I wish for more integration, at least on the cultural side and the education side of it. So yeah, but that's more. It's of course my personal view, and yeah, it would be nice to see a more integrated Europe in the next, I don't know, maybe 10 to 20 years. Yeah.
What did you just say? 10 to 20 years. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
but according to Edouard, then you will be old already. Very good. Yeah. Maxime or Edouard?
Okay. Yeah. So also, I would very much be interested in engaging with the conference. I think it's. I always try to engage with communication efforts from the EU. I think it's always great, and as pro-Europeans, it's also kind of our duty to try and. I wouldn't say push it, but at least like try to make fuss around it so it's visible a bit more easily visible. Regarding my personal wish of the EU, I think it has to be trying to find a solution regarding the attacks on rule of law and freedom of press and expression across the EU, may it be in Poland and Hungary, but also in Belarus, where the people are trying to implement a democracy. And I hope that the way the EU is gonna behave in the coming years is gonna enable people to come around all together to celebrate the idea of democracy and of freedom of expression and freedoms in general.
Thank you.
Right, and I'm gonna finish, if I have a wish, on something that is more keen to communication, because I still think that's the end goal here, to work towards more incarnation of the European Union. This is something that we see make people resonate when they have something they can project themselves onto and relate to. And this is something that we need much more all over Europe. So, I'm from Strasbourg. For me, the idea of the Europe, the EU, that of course it's evident. But I think it's harder to understand that this is not the case for everybody, and not everybody have been on Erasmus or have like cross-border families or this and that. And it's really, yeah, that we all managed to make an effort. I think that we've been mentioning journalism and media. They also have their role to play in this to make this tangible, the European project, the EU. So yeah, wishing for more funds and time for those initiatives.
Thanks a lot again, Maxime, Edouard, and Arianna. It has been a pleasure to moderate this with you.
Thank you.
And thanks again for being ready and for being so active, so positive, and please stay tuned to your idea, however it will develop. The committee is always happy to learn from you and to listen to you and to give you more chances to share your thoughts. With this, I'd like to go back to Betty, who has some final information for our participants, whom I also would like to thank. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I would also like to thank our speakers for the very interesting presentation and even more enjoyable discussion afterwards. And also to you, all our participants who've been here with us today. With this, we've reached the end of our webinar. But before you go, I would like to ask you to share your feedback with us in a poll that will shortly appear on your screens. Should you like to receive a document summarizing all the key points discussed today, you can do so via a link that my colleagues will share. You can sign up to receive it via a link that my colleagues will share with you in the chat. I would also like to invite you for the last webinar of the Digital Masterclasses series will be dedicated to the upcoming social media trends of 2021. And it will take place already next Tuesday on the 8th of December. And since we are ending this series in style, the last workshop will be part of this year's EuropeCom, the European Public Communication Conference 2020. You can find out more about the conference, about the webinar, and also register your attendance via a link that will be also shared with you in the chat. It's www.cor.europa.eu/europecom.co. With this, I would like to thank for your attention, and I hope we can welcome you again in our webinar next week. Have a good evening.